Jon Snow is hands down one of my all-time favourite characters from the Game of Thrones series. His character development throughout the books, in addition to Kit Harington's on-screen portrayal of him, is nothing short of incredible. I've always felt from his first appearance in a Game of Thrones, when we discover he was a bastard-born child, that he had a huge role to play in future novels. He has been so often compared to his father Ned Stark as he matures, with some comparisons for and against his avid display of honour at all times. Everyone, in today's video I'm going to take you all through the entire life of Jon Snow. We're going to begin with his first appearance in the books. I'll highlight key points that he's been involved in and how he matures as the books go on, while using the final 3 seasons from the Game of Thrones TV show to complete his story. With that being said, please sit back and enjoy the entire life of Jon Snow. Jon Snow's birth has always been surrounded by mystery. Born in 283 AC, close to the end of Robert's rebellion, he was named by his perceived father, Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North and Lord of Winterfell. His birth mother was a mystery, and despite many rumours surrounding her identity, Eddard never revealed anything about her to anyone, not even his newly wedded wife Catelyn Stark, who, for the first time, questioned and doubted her husband's integrity, as his apparent unfaithful behaviour was completely out of character for a man that she was fully convinced was always honourable and loyal to her. Due to the circumstances of Jon's birth, she never warmed to him and always made it clear he was in no way noble. His father, Lord Eddard, was fiercely protective of him and refused to send him away to other lords across the country as it was custom. Jon therefore grew up with his family in Winterfell. He was taught the sword by Sir Roderick Cassel and became a fine warrior at quite a young age. He was very close with his half-brother Robb and also Theon Greyjoy, who was a hostage as a result of Balon Greyjoy's rebellion. Jon was particularly close with his sister Arya, who looked up to him and noticed how similarly they resembled each other, which had Arya bring the question whether she was a bastard born too, although her brother quickly assured her that was not the case. Being a bastard was something in which Jon struggled with internally. Despite having Stark blood, he still never felt like he was truly part of the family. The unusual thing is, Jon has more Stark-like features than any of his half-brothers. He is graceful and quick, has a lean build and has the long face of the Starks, with dark brown hair and grey eyes, so dark they almost seem black. Jon resembles his father, Lord Eddard. Because he looks so much like a Stark, it has been noted that whoever Jon's mother was, left little of herself in her son's appearance. Jon's first appearance comes in the first book, A Game of Thrones, when he accompanies his father, his brothers Robb and Bran, his father's ward Theon Greyjoy, and the others from Winterfell to the execution of Garrett, who had deserted the Night's Watch, an action punishable by immediate death. Travelling back to Winterfell, Jon and Robb are walking ahead of the others and come across a litter of direwolf pups. Eddard, not desiring to see the pups suffer and being realistic, states that killing them quickly would forestall a painful and slow death as their mother is already dead. Jon points out that there are 5 pups, one for each of Eddard's legitimate children, and the direwolf is the sigil of House Stark, indicating that they must be meant to have the wolves. Jon is not claiming a pup, highlighting his acceptance of his bastard-born status. However, as they leave, Jon discovers an albino pup, cast away from its litter. He claims the pup for his own, naming it Ghost. I've mentioned that Jon was quite accepting of his status in Winterfell, and he was made to know his place too. During King Robert's visit, Jon was not allowed to sit at the table with his siblings and the royal children, and with his father's acceptance of the Hand of the King position, Catelyn would also not accept Jon remaining in Winterfell either. Jon had other ideas anyway. He was determined to be seen as an honourable man, a respected man, something he knew he couldn't achieve at Winterfell. With his uncle Benjen, a first ranger of the Night's Watch, visiting for the feast and informing Jon that the Night's Watch could use someone as observant as him, Jon requests to accompany him back to the Wall with the aim of taking the Black. Eddard, knowing he can't take Jon with him to King's Landing, accepts the proposal, while Catelyn, knowing Jon is leaving, most likely won't ever return and will never father children due to his oath, is more than pleased, as now there will never be any threat to her legitimate children inheriting Winterfell. Jon says his goodbyes to his family and presents Arya with a small, slender sword he had made for her, which he calls Needle. On his journey to Castle Black, Jon quickly becomes disillusioned with the standards of the new recruits who accompany him and his uncle. Jon fails to realise that he is far ahead of many of the men due to the strong training he's received since he was a young boy. When he arrives at Castle Black and settles in, he's informed by Donal Noy, the Castle Black armourer, that since his immediate arrival he's appeared as nothing but a bully to his fellow recruits. Something that bothers Jon, as he wanted to achieve a position of honour in the right manner. Jon's determination to be better takes an immediate boost by the news that his brother Bran has awoken from his coma, and although crippled, he will survive. Ecstatic at the news, he offers his fellow recruits advice on their swordplay and soon becomes a natural leader, mentor and friend to most of his fellow trainees, earning him the enmity of the Master-at-Arms, Sir Alliser Thorne. When Samwell Tarly arrives at the Wall, Jon reaches out to him too, and helps him being accepted by the majority of the recruits, and the two become good friends. Jon is then chosen to take his vows along with 7 other recruits, meaning he will become a brother of the Night's Watch. However, Samwell has not been chosen, meaning he's not under the full protection of the Watch, and Jon fears he'll most likely be killed with his poor swordsmanship and lack of fighting skills. He pushes for Sam's inclusion for the vow-taking ceremony when he convinces Maester Aemon that Sam's skills are suited to reading, writing and even mathematics, those of a steward, and would be perfect as a steward to Aemon himself. After Lord Commander Mormont's approval, Samwell joins his brothers in taking the Night's Watch vows and is named steward to Maester Aemon. Expecting to be elevated to the position of a ranger, Jon is furious when he himself is named steward to Lord Commander Jorah Mormont, but is convinced by Sam that it is because he is to be groomed to take the commander's place one day. After their vows have been said, Ghost returns with a severed hand, alerting the men to the bodies of Jafer Flowers and Othor. The bodies are taken back to Castle Black and rise later on that night as Whites. When one of the Whites is almost successful in killing Jorah Mormont, Jon intervenes and saves his life. As gratitude for his efforts, Jorah has a Longclaw, the ancestral Valyrian steel sword of Bear Island, recarved on the hilt, changing the bear's head to a wolf's head in honour of House Stark. With the news of Jon's father Lord Eddard Stark's execution, in addition to the fact his brother Robb is now marching south with an army after declaring war against King Joffrey, Jon is torn between his commitment to the Watch and now his former family. He decides to desert the Watch, knowing the penalty is death. His Night's Watch brothers convince him to return, saving his life in the process. Jon Snow's story now moves to the Clash of Kings, where the Night's Watch are preparing for a ranging trip north after the disappearance of several rangers, Jon's uncle Benjen included. Jon and Jorah discuss the journey among other things when Jorah informs him that Maester Aemon had been offered the Iron Throne by a council after his 2 older brothers were killed. He refused and it went to his younger brother instead. Jon understands the similarities of him and Aemon having brothers for kings and reassures his Lord Commander of his commitment to the Night's Watch. After passing through several wildling towns without any sign of wildling activity, the search party then approach Craster's Keep, where they learn that the normally anarchic wildlings are uniting under Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. The group departs Craster's Keep and makes its way to the Fist of the First Men. While there, Ghost leads Jon to a mound where the direwolf digs up an old war horn and a cache of dragonglass wrapped in an old cloak of the Night's Watch. Jon distributes these items among his sworn brothers. After the arrival of Qhorin Halfhand with the men from the Shadow Tower, Jon is picked by Qhorin to accompany one of the 3 scouting parties into the mountains. In the Skirling Pass, Qhorin's party comes across a group of wildling sentries, and Jon is one of those assigned to take them out. He kills one of the men, but discovers his second target is a woman. Jon instead decides to take prisoner the girl who is called Ygritte. She tells Jon that the Starks are believed to have wolf blood in them. Later, Qhorin orders Jon to kill her, but Jon secretly lets her go instead. Before she leaves, Ygritte informs Jon that Mance Rayder would accept him if he wanted to join the Free Folk. Jon tells Qhorin about this, who confirms that Mance would be willing, and tells Jon that Mance had been a man of the Night's Watch himself. Jon does indeed get the opportunity to join the wildlings, but in order to prove himself, he must kill Qhorin. Unbeknownst to the wildlings, Qhorin had previously instructed Jon to do whatever necessary to gain their trust, even if it meant killing him, which reluctantly Jon did. It reminded Jon that the Night's Watch still had men of honour, and that the Brotherhood still existed. Jon is then brought to Mance Rayder and convinces him his desertion from the Night's Watch is real by telling him he was badly treated at Winterfell for being a bastard. During their conversation, Jon learns Mance's plans to invade the Seven Kingdoms. He's caught at a crossroads as he falls in love with Ygritte, even breaking his vow of chastity. He genuinely considers leaving the Night's Watch and starting a life with her, but with the knowledge of Mance's planned attack on Castle Black, he knows he needs to warn them. Ygritte can sense how uneasy Jon is. She knows he still maintains his morals and will not compromise them to prove a point again, especially after what happened with Qhorin. It's not long before a situation like that occurs again, with Styr ordering Jon to kill a harmless old man. Before he can refuse, Ygritte kills him beforehand, sparing Jon the task. The group are then attacked by Summer the direwolf, and Jon manages to escape in the confusion, but not before taking an arrow in the leg. Ygritte is heartbroken by Jon's decision to leave her. Despite flashing in and out of consciousness from blood loss, Jon makes it back to Castle Black. He relays the information of Mance's impending attack as his wounds are tended to by Maester Aemon. Jon is also informed that his brothers Bran and Rickon have been killed by Theon Greyjoy. After he recovers, he joins the Night's Watch in the first offense against the Raiders, that sees them all defeated, including Ygritte, who dies in his arms. That attack, however, was for Mance to see how the wall's defences was structured. He then launched his own attack with far more men as he began his assault on the Seven Kingdoms. Donal Noy orders Jon to take control of the men atop of the wall, which he manages to do so effectively. When Donal is then killed in the fighting, Jon then takes control of the whole of the wall's defences and holds off Mance's attacks for several days. Upon the arrival of Alistair Thorne and Jonas Slynt at Castle Black, Jon is then taken from his post and thrown into an ice cell for his betrayal. He's also threatened with hanging until Maester Aemon vouches for him during the siege on the wall, which has gained him huge popularity amongst the Watch's ranks. In order to make amends for his desertion, Jon is forced to make an assassination attempt on Mance Rayder's life under the false pretenses of negotiations. During the negotiations, however, Mance informs Jon that he has the Horn of Winter, a legendary horn that has the power to bring down the wall. He offers the horn to Jon in exchange for the wildling's safe passage through the wall down south. He also states that he nor his people will yield to any lord or any laws. However, in the middle of this mission, Stannis Baratheon and the Rangers of Cotter Pike appear, which renders Jon's original plan impractical. His defense of the wall also earns him popular support and his release from imprisonment. Jon then meets with Stannis, who tells him that if he recognizes Stannis' claim as king, he will legitimize him as Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, and allow him to marry Val in order to gain support of the North and the Free Folk. Jon is quickly overwhelmed by feelings of guilt and grief for his dead siblings, before going on to admit that becoming Lord of Winterfell was something he had always dreamed of, and that he was always envious of Robb for his legitimate birthright. Jon then realizes if he bends the knee to Stannis, he would then have to embrace the Lord of Light and allow Melisandre, Stannis' Red Priestess, to burn the heart tree in the Godswood of Winterfell. He refuses the offer but is then informed, to his complete shock, that he has been elected the 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch by landslide victory. This actually contradicts the TV portrayal of the election, where it went down to the wire. One of Jon's first orders as Lord Commander is instituting mandatory archery practice for all brothers at Castle Black. Fearing that Melisandre might burn Maester Aemon and the infant of the captured Mance Rayder for their royal blood, Jon secretly swaps Mance's son with Gilly's son. He then sends Samwell Tarly to the Citadel to train as Castle Black's next Maester. When news of Jon's appointment as Lord Commander reaches King's Landing, Queen Regent Cersei Lannister is outraged, especially as he has given Stannis Baratheon shelter. The small council agree that Jon must be removed from command. Grand Maester Pycelle suggests informing the Watch that the Crown will send no more men to the Wall until Jon is removed, but Qyburne's more thorough suggestion to send 100 recruits with secret orders to remove Jon seems to go down a lot better. She then plots to send Sir Osney Kettleblack to carry out the plan, but both Osney and Cersei are imprisoned by the Faith of the Seven before these plans can come to fruition, leaving Jon's command unchallenged. Jon willingly cedes the Night Fort to Stannis, whose men also occupy Castle Black. He is continually harassed by the Queen's men, such as Sir Godry Farring and Sir Clayton Suggs. The men are devoutly loyal to Cersei and advise Jon to keep Ghost close. Even Melisandre warns Jon against daggers in the dark. Jon rebukes all demands from Stannis to settle his men within the Gift, claiming that the land and the other unoccupied castles along the wall as belonging to the Night's Watch. Jon remembers the parting words of Maester Aemon to kill the boy and let the man be born. The same advice Aemon had given when his younger brother ascended to the Iron Throne as Aegon Targaryen V. A pivotal moment in Jon's growth comes into play when he orders Janos Slynt, who had participated in the beheading of Lord Eddard Stark, to garrison the abandoned Greyguard. After Janos refuses and then continues to refuse the Lord Commander, in addition to insulting him, Jon orders him hanged for his insubordination. Jon then recalls the laws of the First Men and his father, however, and instead beheads Janos himself, using Longclaw to carry out the sentence. This increases Stannis' respect for Jon and cements his new position. Stannis refuses Jon's request to spare Mance Rayder. As Melisandre burns the king beyond the wall, Jon has his men kill Mance with arrows to end his suffering prematurely. Stannis then marches west at Jon's suggestion and is able to secure the allegiance of the clans, greatly augmenting his own strength. When news arrives that Ramsay Bolton is to marry Jon's half-sister Arya Stark, Melisandre informs Jon she has had a vision of a girl on a dying horse making for Castle Black. Melisandre reveals that she had changed the appearances of Mance and Rattleshurd with a glamour, so that Stannis actually executed Rattleshurd and that Mance has been serving Jon all along. Mance is secretly sent to rescue Arya, although the conspirators do not know that Ramsay's bride at Winterfell is actually Jane Poole. In the TV show, Mance's face wasn't switched and he was actually killed in the manner previously described. It was also Sansa, not Arya, who was set to marry Ramsay. In order to learn more about Whites, Jon consigns the corpses of dead wildlings in Castle Black's ice cells, hoping they will rise while safely imprisoned. After Stannis' wife Queen Cersei Baratheon arrives at Castle Black from Eastwatch, Jon negotiates with Tycho Nestoris, an envoy of the Iron Bank of Braavos. He agrees to a loan so the Watch can purchase food and supplies while also hire ships. When a wearied girl arrives at Castle Black, Jon is surprised to learn it is not his sister Arya, but instead Alice Karstark, who is fleeing a forced marriage to Cregan Karstark. Her uncle only desires her because she is heir to Carhold. When Cregan arrives with his reinforcements to claim Alice, Jon has them thrown into an ice cell. He then arranges a marriage between Alice and Sigorn, establishing House Thenn. Jon orders Cotter Pike to rescue wildlings at Hardhome. When Alice informs Jon that Arnulf Karstark plans to betray Stannis, so Jon has Clydas send a raven to Deepwood Motte in an attempt to warn the king. Jon treats with Tormund when Val brings the wildling leader to Castle Black. The Lord Commander tries to convince Torrhen Flint and Brandon Norrie of the necessity of allowing Tormund's wildlings to pass through the wall. Tormund leads over 3,000 wildlings south. Jon then intends to rescue Cotter at Hardhome, but he is interrupted by a taunting letter from Ramsay, which claims that Stannis has been defeated and Mance captured. Jon relinquishes command of the ranging and announces his intention to ride south against House Bolton. He does not order the Night's Watch to fight with him, but asks both wildlings and Black Brothers alike to join him of their own volition. Most wildlings in the Shield Hall agree to support him, but Jon's decision causes great discontent within the Watch's upper leadership. In the confusion resulting from One's killing of Sir Patrick of King's Mountain, Jon is attacked in the mutiny at Castle Black. While stabbing the Lord Commander, Bowen Marsh and Wick Whittlestick stayed for the Watch. So guys, it's at this point that the books end and Jon's fate falls into the hands of the Game of Thrones TV show, or more so its writers. Honestly, I hope the books, whenever they do come out or get finished, will give us all the ending we crave, but for now that remains to be seen. So we'll take it to season 6 just after Jon's death. As the TV show technically isn't canon, I understand if most of you, all of you, some of you don't wish to continue watching, but for those of you who want to see the complete story, then please feel free to stay tuned. Upon seeing the body of his dead master, Ghost howls in the morning from his pen. His cries summon Davos, Ed, and a handful of other Black Brothers, who quickly move Jon's body to his quarters. Melisandre also looks at Jon's body and claims that she had seen a vision of him fighting at Winterfell, though Davos remains adamant that Jon is gone for good. Thorne later approaches Davos and the loyal brothers with a promise of amnesty if they all throw their weapons down and surrender, though they refuse to back down despite Thorne's threats of death if they do, which all but confirms his part in Jon's assassination. Melisandre, still shaken from the death of Stannis, then performs a ritual with Jon's body after Davos' pleas, cleaning his wounds, cutting some of his hair, trimming his beard, and burning it all in the fire, all while chanting in High Valyrian. Her attempts seem to be in vain. Those who are present for the ritual leave the room one by one, and after a few moments alone with Ghost, Jon awakens, gasping for air. Jon gets dressed and enters the courtyard to the surprise of everyone present, reuniting with Tormund and Ed. Later, the leaders of the mutiny are rounded up for execution. After hearing the last words from each, with the exception of Ollie, Jon once again acts in accordance with his father's law that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword, and personally cuts the trapdoor rope, hanging them all simultaneously. Technically free from his vows, he then passes his cloak and commands to Ed, declaring his intent to leave the Night's Watch. Ed chastises him for abandoning the Night's Watch despite the threat of the White Walkers looming, and reminds Jon of the oath he swore. Jon retorts by saying he already died. His watch has ended and there was no chance of him ever staying at Castle Black. His half-sister Sansa arrives after escaping from the now legitimized Ramsay Bolton. The two share their lives since leaving Winterfell and reminisce about their childhoods. Sansa regretfully mentions how awful she was to Jon during their youth and that she felt guilty about it for years. Jon shrugs it off as childhood mischief, though he forgives Sansa after she presses the issue. The pair acknowledge that the last haven is Winterfell, and even then, the Boltons are currently occupying it, but Jon is reluctant to fight again after everything he's been through. He then receives a letter from Ramsay informing him that he is holding Rickon prisoner and arrogantly demands the return of Sansa on the back of his threat to massacre Jon's allies, rape Sansa and murder Rickon. Jon notes Ramsay's signature signed Warden of the North, and Sansa deduces that Roose Bolton is dead. Ramsay's 5,000 men far outnumbers the 2,000 wildlings at Tormund's command. However, with some urging from Sansa to rally the northern houses still loyal to the Starks, Jon agrees to retake Winterfell and end Ramsay once and for all. As the Boltons have the support of the three most powerful houses of the north, Jon suggests rallying the weaker houses, as their combined strength would give them a numerical advantage when combined with his current forces. When Sansa mentions Brynden Tully's recapture of Riverrun and the virtual guarantee of support from the Tullys, Jon is surprised that Sansa has such valuable information. With help from Tormund, Jon speaks with the wildlings and asks for their help in the coming battle against Ramsay. Though Tormund stands by Jon, Dalba is skeptical, but Tormund speaks up for Jon, saying he died for the wildlings' well-being, and if they don't help him, they are cowards. The wildlings agree after 1-1 stands up and says, "Snow," confirming his allegiance. Jon, Sansa and Davos later appeal to Lyanna Mormont, who previously refused to aid Stannis. Jon tells Lyanna of his friendship and service under her uncle, Jorah Mormont, while he was in the Night's Watch. Though Lyanna initially refuses them, Davos manages to convince her that they need to defeat Ramsay in order to unite the North against the coming White Walkers. Lyanna agrees and supplies them with 62 men, the remaining force of House Mormont, promising that each will fight with a worth of 10 men. However, Jon fails to convince Robert Glover to pledge his allegiance to them, as he cites Robb's failure to protect the North from the Ironborn and Jon's allegiance with the Wildlings. Without Jon knowing, Sansa sends a letter calling for help. When meeting to discuss terms, Ramsay refuses Jon's offer of one-on-one combat to decide the fate of the battle, as he knows he has the larger army. Ramsay offers surrender terms, saying he will pardon Jon for breaking his Night's Watch vows if he will hand Sansa over, which is ignored. Sansa refuses the terms of surrender and tells Ramsay he will die the following day before riding off. After arguing with Sansa over attacking too early, Jon then informs Melisandre not to bring him back if he should fall in the battle. Melisandre insists it's not her gift that has brought Jon back, but the Lord of Lights, and that only the Lord of Light can decide Jon's fate. The armies gather the following morning as Ramsay brings out Rickon. He tells Rickon to run towards Jon, and as Rickon does so, Ramsay brings out a bow. Jon desperately rides out on a horse to try save his brother as Ramsay fires arrows at him. Ramsay appears to have no intention of hitting Rickon, but eventually, just as Jon is about to reach his brother, Rickon is struck in the back with an arrow and killed. This is a clear intention of how mentally unhinged and deranged Ramsay is. His plan was to lure Jon out by himself and have his army follow suit. As the army marches forward, Ramsay executes his own pincer movement with his infantry, completely encircling the Stark wildling army. The Bolton army continues to press their advantage with interlocking spears from all directions, forcing Jon's army closer and closer together. Jon almost suffocates from the Bolton army tactics, but holds on just in time to see Peter Baelish and Sansa arrive with reinforcements, courtesy of House Arryn. The Knights of the Vale quickly flank the encircling Bolton army, which is decimated. Jon makes eye contact with Ramsay as he retreats from the battlefield and chases him. Ramsay returns to Winterfell and closes the gates, confident that their opponent is not equipped for a siege of Winterfell, as long as they remain within the gates and he readies his archers. However, with the help of the giant 1-1, Jon's forces manage to breach the gates and the remaining Bolton forces are defeated, although 1-1 is severely injured by a barrage of arrows and spears. and eventually succumbs to Ramsay's final arrow as Jon and Tormund watch on in horror, helpless to save their friend. Ramsay finally accepts Jon's offer to a one-on-one duel while wielding a bow and arrow. Grabbing a nearby shield, Jon deftly blocks all of Ramsay's shots until he gets close enough to smack the bow out of Ramsay's hands and knock him to the ground, whereupon he furiously punches Ramsay's face into a bloody pulp. Jon orders Ramsay locked up and the remaining Boltons surrender, restoring House Stark's hold on Winterfell. Rickon's body is found, and Jon orders his body buried in the crypt with Ned's bones. Sansa asks Jon for Ramsay's whereabouts, and he directs her to the kennels, where she kills Ramsay that night by setting his own hounds on him. As the Starks retake Winterfell and settle back into their home, the revelation of Shireen's sacrifice comes to light, and Davos cannot contain his anger and pain. Upon hearing this, Jon banishes Melisandre from the north on threat of execution, although the witch knows this will not be her last encounter with him. As she leaves, Jon and Sansa both agree that they need to trust each other fully, with Sansa adding that out of all the people they can't trust, Littlefinger is certainly one of them, despite his aid. Sometime later, the surviving heads of the great houses of the North meet in Winterfell to discuss what steps to take next. Lady Lyanna Mormont shames the houses who did not come to Jon's aid. Lord Glover, one of several to stand and admit his wrongdoings. The meeting ends with all of the lords uniting under the Stark banner, proclaiming Jon as king in the north, just as they once had done with his brother Robb. Jon orders his banner men to conscript all able-bodied men and boys aged 10 to 60 for combat training. However, he notes that having only half of the population in the north fighting the White Walkers is not enough, so he also orders that every woman and girl should also be trained and equipped as well. He also asks that all maesters should start searching for dragonglass. He stresses that dragonglass is now more valuable than gold due to the threat of the White Walkers. He also pardons the Umbers and Karstarks for uniting with House Bolton despite Sansa's protests. At Winterfell, Jon, Sansa and Davos discuss Tyrion's letter that they have received inviting Jon to Dragonstone. While Sansa suspects it may be a trap, Jon doesn't believe so, due to Tyrion ending the letter with the line, "All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes," something Tyrion said to Jon in their first meeting years prior. Even so, Jon agrees that now is not the right time to go to Dragonstone, followed by Davos adding that to have Daenerys as an ally in the wars to come would be of great benefit. Jon then receives a raven from Sam informing him of his discovery of dragonglass on Dragonstone, which forces Jon to make a delicate decision. At another gathering of the Northern Lords, Jon informs them of Sam's discovery and Daenerys' invitation, telling them that he has decided to accept. Many of the lords, including Sansa, openly disapprove, but Jon stresses that they need both the dragonglass and powerful allies like Daenerys to have any chance at all of defeating the Night King. He knows he must make this journey for the sake of the North and the rest of Westeros. He names Sansa as regent to rule in his place until he returns. Jon and Davos arrive at Dragonstone and are immediately greeted by Tyrion and Missandei. Upon meeting, the two humorously address each other. Tyrion addresses Jon as the Bastard of Winterfell, while Jon addresses him as the Dwarf of Casterly Rock, which lightens any tensions. They reluctantly surrender their weapons also. As Jon makes his way to the castle alongside Tyrion, he's in awe of the dragons flying low across the seafront. He's also taken aback by their presence and is told by Tyrion that getting used to the dragons doesn't ever get any easier. In the throne room, Jon and Daenerys meet for the first time and discuss their family's history that stretches back centuries. Dany informs Jon that his ancestor Torrhen Stark, the last king in the north, swore an oath of absolute perpetuity to hers, and she believes he should uphold it. Jon then retaliates with the fact that her father burned his grandfather and uncle alive and would have destroyed the whole city. Daenerys apologizes for her father's horrific actions and asks not to be judged by them. The conversation turns to the army of the dead, and Jon stresses that they need to be stopped. The conversation ends in a stalemate, with the Queen stating that as long as Jon calls himself king, then he is in open rebellion. Jon and Davos are then given quarters in the Dragonstone Castle, while the Queen decides if they are prisoners or not. Jon and Tyrion have a brief conversation the next day on the situation at hand. He tells Tyrion he's frustrated that things have come to a standstill, and he's struggling to convince his people to believe in something that they don't believe actually exists. Tyrion encourages Jon not to give up and that there is always a way. Jon then goes and joins Dany as she watches her dragons fly along the coast. She explains to him why she names them what she did, and that she knows what it's like to lose people she loved. She also states that she will do whatever she has to do in order to remove Cersei, and maybe she should rethink what she once thought she knew. Jon then invites her into the long abandoned mine to show her its structure before it's hacked away. While inside, they come across ancient drawings depicting the children of the forest and the first men fighting together against what is definitely carvings of the Night King and his White Walkers. Jon explains to Daenerys that the children and the first men joined together to stop their extinction, and that is what they must do now. Daenerys agrees to fight in the war as long as Jon bends the knee. She then asks Jon to consider if his pride is more important than saving the North and his people. She's then informed of another setback involving food supply from the Reach, and frustratingly states she will take her 3 dragons and burn the Red Keep to the ground. After calming down, she asks Jon for advice. Jon calmly tells her that if she were to melt the city, then she will be no different than the ones who currently occupy the throne. Jon receives a letter informing him that the army of the dead have approached Eastwatch by the sea, which calls upon him to act. Tyrion hatches a plan to take a ranging team north of the wall and capture a White to prove to Cersei of their existence. I'm just going to pause the video briefly, guys, and add something here myself, my own opinion. This has to be the stupidest idea possible, to risk their lives like that, risk some of the most important characters to capture a creature to show someone who only cares about decimating them at the first chance she gets that the creature actually exists. I really don't like this part, so I'll make it long story short. The ranging group are successful in capturing a White, half of them die, Jon almost dies, Viserion gets killed, then reanimated, and now the Night King has a fully grown dragon and ends up blasting a hole through the wall, letting all the Whites through. Once again, great idea, Tyrion. Jon is devastated over feeling like he cost Viserion his life, but Daenerys is glad that she now knows that the White Walkers truly exist. He calls her Dany before then suggesting my queen would be more appropriate, indicating he is willing to bend the knee. After they recover from the ordeal, Jon and Daenerys parley with Cersei to discuss terms on the impending war, with Jon trying to convince her that the war to the north is far more important than the battle for control of Westeros. He explains that if the Night King gets through the wall with his army, then everyone, the entire continent, is dead. The Hound releases the White for all to see, and it charges directly at Cersei, only to be held back by its chain. Jon then demonstrates the 2 ways to destroy it: fire or dragonglass. Cersei then agrees not to interfere with the ongoings, but will not withdraw her troops. She calls on Jon as king in the north to hold true to the condition that he will then not interfere when the war between Daenerys and Cersei resumes. Jon explains he cannot serve 2 queens and has pledged to Dany already, showing signs of upholding his honor that got his father and brother killed. He refuses to lie to the Lannisters even after Tyrion and Dany's clear unease at what may happen now that a furious Cersei has quashed all negotiations. After some time, Cersei returns, stating that her armies will travel north and aid the Stark and Targaryen armies. Unbeknownst to Jon and Dany, this was a lie to keep their minds off Cersei and her throne. The Queen's plan was to let the White Walkers and the Northern armies fight, annihilate each other to the point of having little to no men left, while the Lannister army, with the addition of the Golden Company, would sweep in and clean up, rendering Cersei victorious. Meanwhile, Jon's half-brother Bran finally hears Lyanna Stark's dying words and uncovers the truth. She was never raped or kidnapped by Rhaegar Targaryen. She willingly ran off with him. She loved him. They married in secret. Jon is their son and therefore the legitimate heir to the Iron Throne, hidden as Ned's bastard son in order to protect him. Bran states that Jon must be told who he truly is. Dany and Jon no longer deny their feelings for each other and consummate their relationship. As they arrive in the north, Jon explains to Dany that it is completely normal for northern folk to be unwelcoming to strangers, that they simply just prefer their own. He introduces her to Sansa, who also appears to be marginally hostile, but still greets her somewhat warmly. After they settle, Jon rides Rhaegal for the first time, to the shock of many. The two find a discreet waterfall some distance away from Winterfell, where they share an intimate moment. Later in the catacombs, when he is lighting candles in remembrance of his family, Jon reunites with Sam. The two share a conversation, discussing the means behind the execution of Sam's father and brother. In frustration, Sam reveals Jon's real identity to him, that he is Aegon Targaryen, the true king of the Seven Kingdoms. Sam goes on to explain that Ned lied in order to protect him from Robert and those wishing to eradicate all other claims to the Iron Throne. Despite this revelation, Jon insists that Daenerys is still his queen. As Jon goes to visit Lyanna's crypt, Daenerys joins him and explains she already knew the story of her brother Rhaegar raping and kidnapping Lyanna. Jon tells her that he didn't, going on to explain the real story between the two, the focal point being that the fact is they had a son, who was then disguised as the bastard son of Lyanna's brother Ned. Jon then reveals himself to Dany as Aegon Targaryen. Dany's main concern is his claim to the Iron Throne, something Jon does not want. Suddenly the horn is sounded for the arrival of the Night King's army, and the two return to the top of the castle walls. As the battle commences, Jon rides Rhaegal as Daenerys rides Drogon, and the two seek out the Night King, who mounts the undead Viserion. Rhaegal is badly injured but manages to land on the surface before passing out. Jon manages to get to his feet and sees the Night King. He charges towards him to fight, but the Night King's wights come between the two and Jon cannot get to him in time. Just to stop it right there for a side note, guys, this was the moment that really would have given the audience what we've waited 7 seasons for. This would have helped with the pain of how bad season 8 was. Instead, Jon gets attacked by Viserion and Arya kills the Night King with her Valyrian steel dagger. After the battle, Jon is hailed for his participation in doing what was necessary to win the war. Daenerys looks on in hidden jealousy and angst that these men do not love her as they love Jon, and worries about what Jon had told her earlier on about his true parentage. Later in the Queen's chambers, Jon reaffirms his loyalty to her and that he does not wish to be king, only to serve her. Dany tells Jon that the only way to prevent the matter causing unrest is for him to never tell anyone, which Jon agrees, except for one condition, that he tells his sisters, as he owes them that at least. Jon meets with his sisters, but before he can even steer the conversation in the direction he's hoping, both Sansa and Arya state that they do not trust the Queen. He defends Daenerys and says that they only have to get to know her, to which the sisters reply that they never will. Pained, Jon looks at Bran, who says that it's his choice to tell them. Jon makes them both swear to never tell anyone the secret he's about to reveal to them. Jon then tells Bran to reveal the truth about his parentage to Sansa and Arya. As Jon marches towards King's Landing, hoping for a peaceful surrender from Cersei, things take a massive downturn with the gruesome public execution of Missandei. This solidifies Daenerys' decision to do things exactly as she wants to, and will no longer take advice on any further matter, something Jon knew from the moment he seen Missandei fall. As he separates from the Targaryen forces and heads back to Dragonstone, he's asked by Varys to take the Iron Throne, as the Queen's mind has become quite unhinged. Tyrion informs Daenerys of Varys' treason, and he is executed by Dragonfire. Jon comes to see Dany and once again tells her that he does not want the Iron Throne. She informs him that Sansa betrayed his trust for a reason, and realizes she will not rule her people out of love but fear. Jon is still hesitant about their blood connection and is no longer sure about their relationship. During the Battle of King's Landing, the Golden Company is caught off guard by Drogon and as a result is decimated by the charging Northern and Targaryen forces. The Lannister forces and people of King's Landing surrender. However, Daenerys and Drogon burn the streets filled with people as both the Targaryen and Northern forces start slaughtering the surrendered Lannister forces and civilians alike, as Jon tries in vain to hold them back. He is horrified by the carnage that occurs, despite his calls to stop it, and kills one of his own soldiers trying to rape a woman. He orders his forces to evacuate after the wildfire starts erupting. After the battle, Jon confronts Grey Worm and the Unsullied, who are executing remaining surrendered Lannister soldiers. Grey Worm states that he has been ordered by Daenerys to execute all who followed Cersei. When Jon tries to stop him, the Unsullied and Stark soldiers almost come to blows, but Davos diffuses the situation by telling Jon to take it up with the Queen. As they walk away, they witness Grey Worm executing the captives. As Jon returns to the Red Keep, he witnesses Daenerys' speech and is shocked to hear that her conquest is not over, as now she wants to liberate the rest of the world. He reunites with Arya, who warns him that he will always be a threat in the Queen's eyes and that Sansa will never bend the knee. He then visits Tyrion in his imprisonment and asks Tyrion to help him. The only real way for Tyrion to help Jon is to be honest, that the only real threat is Daenerys herself. Something he's been realizing for quite some time. She has justified her actions and there is no way back for her now. Jon is still unsure about what to do, but he is the only person who can physically get close enough to the Queen in order to kill her. There is nobody else. Jon confronts her about her atrocities during the battle, and Dany displays no remorse, believing it was necessary to achieve her goals. Daenerys assures him that the new world she has in mind will be a good one, and she knows what is good. She tries to convince him to be by her side to help build her new world, and an anguished Jon reaffirms his allegiance to her. As they share a passionate kiss, Jon reluctantly stabs her. Daenerys collapses and dies in his arms as Jon grieves over her. Drogon approaches them after witnessing this while Jon gently lays her on the ground. Seeing his mother dead on the floor, Drogon becomes enraged and faces Jon. He prepares for his death, but the dragon instead melts the Iron Throne and flies away with her corpse. Jon is then imprisoned by the Unsullied for Dany's murder, but they allow the Great Council to decide his fate. After electing Bran as king, he decided to exile Jon to the Night's Watch, much to the dismay of Grey Worm and the Unsullied. As Jon leaves for Castle Black, he apologizes to Bran for not being there when he needed him, but Bran assures him that he has always been where he needed to be. Sometime later, Jon arrives at Castle Black and reunites with Tormund and the Wildlings. Later, he dons the black cloak of a sworn brother of the Night's Watch and reunites with Ghost. He then leaves Ghost and the wildlings for lands north of the wall, watching as the gate to Castle Black closes behind him, and then rides into the haunted forest alongside them. So guys, with that being said, that is my video essay on the life of Jon Snow. This video took an extremely long time to make. It took a lot of dedication and a lot of effort, so I would really appreciate it if you could give it a like and leave a comment. Smashing that like button and leaving a comment pushes it up through YouTube's algorithm and the video will get recommended, and I really would like this video to do well. Thanks again guys, I will see you all in the very next video.